in the very first decade of my corporate career, there was a sad event which I had to encounter and overcome. So I was the business head of an organization which was into recruitment and staffing services. And we used to provide solutions, that is, my previous employer used to provide recruitment solutions to various organizations. We used to also specialize in executive search as well as manage bulk hiring for certain organizations. So the process was we used to never charge candidates when they get placed into an organization. However, the client used to pay us for managing the entire process and hiring the right candidate. Now, for a certain public sector bank, they or the organization reached out to my erstwhile organization pertaining to bulk hiring requirements for sales executives as well as customer service executives. So this was a massive requirement which went into hundreds, and I had a team of recruiters at that point of time, and they were interested in managing the entire process. And the unfortunate event which happened, that there was one particular candidate who was hired in a customer service role, and one of my recruiters, a good recruiter, ended up taking a kickback or possibly a fee from this particular candidate, which was not something which the company had approved or as per the company's policy. As I mentioned, as per the company's policy, the fee was paid by the organization and we used to not take any money from the candidates. So once this candidate joined that particular bank, she had a discussion with HR or the human resources team, and I got to know that there was this kickback or there was this illegal fee which was taken by my team member from this candidate, and the candidate also didn't think too much about it. However, matters like this cannot be kept confidential for too long. So one afternoon I received a call from the human resources representative at that particular bank who told me about this, and that one of my colleagues or the recruiter had taken this money from the candidate to place her or facilitate her interview in that organization and possibly post the selection. So when I confronted this particular recruiter, he accepted it, that he has made a mistake and there's a violation in terms of the company policy. And for me, it was an integrity issue. And this particular organization which I was working had very strong and robust norms pertaining to such integrity issues. And although it was a very sad and heartbreaking situation, because I had a good relation with that particular recruiter and he was also efficient. However, that moment, or possibly what you may call greed, got the better out of him. And he ended up taking that particular kickback or illegal fee from the candidate. And I had to go by the company policy and I had to immediately terminate the services. So it was a tough moment, and this was my first tryst with an integrity issue, especially in an organization or in a role which I was managing. At that point of time, I used to wonder whether I took the right decision, because I had gone ahead with terminating this person on the spot, especially because he had accepted his mistake. So there was no inquiry to be done because he had accepted his mistake. And as per the company policy, in case things are proved, especially when it comes to financial embezzlement, a decision had to be taken, and I went as per the company policy, which was well documented. I, of course, before taking the decision, spoke to my boss, and he also said that follow the company policy, and that's what I did. Now, a few times subsequent to that, integrity issues have been encountered by me, primarily pertaining to other teams in an organization, or maybe even pertaining to other organizations with whom I have been interacting in various capacities or roles. And thankfully, these are very few instances. However, the point is, integrity issues at the workplace have been present in certain organizations, and it's going to be something which will continue. And it's one point to ensure that organizations take very strong cognizance of this. So when it comes to integrity issues, especially with regard to my experience, I've come across three broad forms of integrity issues. So first is when a team member or an employee of an organization makes a wrong commitment deliberately to a client, a prospective client, or possibly to a stakeholder or a fellow employee within the organization. So any deliberate factor or a deliberate intent to provide wrong information, or possibly giving some information which is not factual, or deliberately lying, is definitely an integrity issue. The second point which I've come across is financial embezzlement, or taking money or putting money in your pocket where it should not be done, like the case which I mentioned earlier. And the third point can be pertaining to behavior, where even acts in terms of harassing your colleague or a person of the opposite gender, that's also going to be within the purview of integrity. Also, there would be several other aspects when it comes to integrity issues. However, with regard to my experience, these are the three main broad instances that I've observed, either within the organizations that I have been, a few of them, not all of them, and also within my observation or possibly interactions with people in other organizations where I have not been directly employed with. So now, as per my analysis, why do integrity issues happen? So my thought, in most cases, it's because of two emotions which get the better of a person. One is greed and two is fear. Especially when it comes to money, it's the element of greed. When it comes to making wrong commitments, many a times it's fear. However, what's important is for us to realize integrity issues are very serious issues. So from an employee or team member's perspective, I think the best point for us to understand is, be it greed, fear, or any other emotion, let it not get the better out of us. What we need to understand is the truth will always prevail, and we may feel that something would be hidden for some time. However, the reality is it would never get hidden. So in history, you can look at various scams which have come up. So the people who perpetrated those scams thought that they would get scot-free. However, the fact is, even after a few years or after several years, that scam has come into light, and that's going to be extremely detrimental to a person's credibility, reputation, and life in general. So all of us need to realize that it's always good to do whatever is ethical, moral, and legal, and anything beyond that is possibly going to be an issue in terms of integrity in case we engage in it. The second point is pertaining to leaders. So leaders should take a very strong decision when it comes to integrity issues. Thankfully for me, the organizations where I have been employed have had an absolute no-nonsense approach to integrity issues. So I've always got the support from my bosses whenever there were instances where I had to take certain decisions, and I've done that after consultation. However, there have been very strong decisions where I realized that something was not right, or the organization's interests were being hampered by a person for his or her personal interest. So taking a strong decision is going to be extremely vital as per my perspective. However, always go as per the company policy and do consult your superiors. Organizations should realize that accepting or not taking cognizance of integrity issues can prove to be extremely damaging. I've come across certain cases where, in case someone is a rock star performer or someone who is perceived to be valuable to an organization, that person actually does something wrong. There may be an integrity issue, and because of his status, seniority, or his performance, or the valuable performance to the organization, he's basically left scot-free, or she's left scot-free, and that can actually communicate a wrong message. So please understand, there are other people in the organization who are watching. The moment you let someone who has perpetrated an integrity issue or done something wrong which is detrimental to the organization's interests, you let that person go scot-free, then others are watching. There can be a replication or there can be instance where even others start doing it, and then the organization would definitely get negatively impacted. Also, for individuals who observe integrity issues, so we come across a lot of whistleblower cases, and that's also in media. And many a times these whistleblowers themselves get punished. So with any employee or team member, when they see something wrong in an organization, always analyze whether your leadership team is supportive and whether people are transparent, and blowing the whistle possibly would not put you in any danger, because that's very important. Many a times people with very good intent escalate integrity issues or their observation on integrity issues, and then they themselves come in the dock. So before blowing the whistle, always analyze and understand what the company's policies are, and also at your discretion, maybe you can also speak to someone who you trust beyond the organization, and only then have the needful done, because you don't want to hamper your interest. However, if you're in an organization where you don't have trust and you assess that in case you escalate some point, you would be in a difficult position, then that organization by itself is a low integrity organization. So you will need to look at opportunities elsewhere in case you can't do much about it. So when it comes to integrity issues, I always believe that there has to be a strong decision. It's always sad to part ways with a team member. However, there's not much of an option, because also letting someone go scot-free and without any punishment, especially in case everything is proven against that person or what that person has done, it's actually proven, then it's going to have an impact where others will observe and do the same thing. So taking a strong decision, and at the same time, even if you have to part ways with someone, please don't get into anything, and this is for leaders, don't get into blacklisting that organization or passing the word around, because everyone has the right to employment. Okay, if a person is not working with you, there would be trust issues, because having a person or giving such a person an opportunity, one more chance, you may not trust that person, and it also sends the wrong message. However, please don't hamper that person's opportunity in any other organization, because I've actually seen that when someone is actually asked to leave because of an integrity issue, then a leader or the boss, hampers other prospects of this person, and that's not right, because every person needs to be given an opportunity to reform. May not be in that organization, however, elsewhere, that possibility has to be there. So this is a very sensitive issue in terms of integrity, and the unfortunate reality is from time to time, organizations and leaders come across such integrity issues. And my perspective is it always has to be dealt with a firm hand for the organization's benefit, as well as to ensure that the right message is passed within the organization. Thank you very much for your time.